Hey, hey, hey! Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to the channel, and welcome back to Pelion, South Carolina. Y'all, it's finally Friday, y'all. Me and my shed buddy Aries is out here in the shed, and y'all, I got a special video for you today. It's going to be a little different than usual. No worm walkthrough of the bins today. Sorry if you came just for that. I know I do that every day. I apologize. But I got a fresh idea. I think it's a fresh idea. It might not be an original idea because other people have done it before, but I don't think I've ever done this on my channel. And I've been doing this almost a year now, and I can't believe I hadn't talked about this yet. So y'all, I want to talk about how to store your finished worm castings. Y'all, I got several different ways arrayed out here in front of us here. And I'm going to start over here on the left-hand side and work to the right. And I'm going to talk about each of the ways you can store your finished worm castings. Because if you're anything like me, you're making lots of worm castings, and you might need to store them for a little while. Whether you're a hobbyist, or you're running a small business. This obviously won't work for anybody running a large-scale business. But if you're just a hobbyist, or if you're running a small business or just a side hustle like I am, mine started out as a hobby and it just kind of morphed into a side business, a little hustle. But anyways, that's beside the point. You're going to need somewhere, you're going to start producing more castings than you can use at any one given time. Or maybe you need to store them through the year so you have them for the springtime. Or maybe there's only one time a year you take your worm castings to the farmer's market, or you know, maybe you sell them to a certain nursery at one time a year or something. Point being, your worms eat and breed year-round, and they're going to be making castings every minute of every day. And eventually, you're probably going to need somewhere to store some castings. So this video is my attempt to address that and maybe share some of my knowledge that I've learned over the past couple of years of doing this. And so let's get right into it, and I'll start talking about the things I have arrayed here on the floor. Right here, the first thing we got is a sandbag. It's just a simple sandbag that I got off Amazon. You can get them in different colors. I prefer greens because green makes me think of gardening, so I got green. I like green. But what I like about these sandbags here is they're inexpensive. They're very inexpensive. Plus, let me see if you can see, they're woven. They're woven. They're I think it's it's some kind of polypropylene or something. It's some kind of plastic of some sort, in other words. It's kind of like tarp material. I don't know if you can hear this. Let me get a little closer so we can zoom in and see this material. You see how it's weaved together like this in this basket weave kind of deal going on here? Well, this here makes this bag very breathable. It'll hold your castings, and it'll keep them moist, but it's also breathable, which everybody out there that does castings knows your life and your castings are biologically active. If they're moist and got lots of fungi and bacteria growing in them. Yes, I know, Aries, I know. You just can't stand it. You got to come over here and let me pet you, don't you? Yes. Well, let everybody out there in YouTube land see how you slow me down every day, making me give you pets. Okay, well, there you go. Now go on. Let me talk now. I got to talk to the good people out there in YouTube land. All right, let me get back to what I was saying. These things are really good because they are breathable. And so they keep the life in your castings alive, because they can get oxygen. Now, and they hold, they'll hold approximately, about 25, maybe. You might be able to squeeze, you might be able to get more than 30 pounds in here. But I like to keep about 25 pounds in each bag, give or take, because that gives you enough room to cinch it closed and tighten it up. About 25 pounds is what I like to put in them. But you can go like 20, and you can push it up to 30. I'm not quite sure on that. But I like to stick around 25 pounds. But anyways, that's not the point. I like these because they're breathable. And you can put about 25 pounds in here or so. I would say the only downside that I've noticed with using these bags is they're really breathable. So if you can't store castings in here long term. If you plan on leaving the castings in these bags for months, well, your castings are going to dry out. So you're going to need to, for me, this is more of a short-term, maybe a medium-term option here because of how breathable they are. They will dry out. Eventually, your castings will dry out in these bags. So you need to take them out every once in a while and and moisten them up a little bit by spraying a little bit of water on them or something to keep them moist. But that's my experience with these. They're really good for short term, for customers that want to buy some, and you hand them off to, you fill it up and you hand them off to them, and then they take them home and they use them, But I wouldn't recommend the sandbag for long-term storage, just because eventually the castings will dry out in these bags. So there's a little bit of give and take with these. All right. Now, moving along to something more simple that everybody might have at home. These coffee cans, these larger ones, these things are airtight. They're perfect. I drink a lot of coffee. I don't know about everybody else, but I drink a pretty big. Aries. Yes, I know. I love you too, Aries. All right, you big old ham. All right, fine. All right, there. Now go on now. All right. Now, the bad thing about these, well, the good thing and the bad thing, well, they'll keep your castings moist, but they're airtight. So everybody out there making castings knows, your biological activity in your life and your castings is really the most important thing about your worm castings. If you put them in something that's airtight like this, you're going to kill all your life. It's going to go anaerobic, and you're going to kill all the good life, and you're probably going to start breeding some bad life in your anaerobic microbes in your worm castings that you really don't want. So if you use something like this, if you're a hobbyist or just a hobby gardener and you're not making a lot of castings, this might be a good solution, because it's a small enough size, for someone who's just got a small bin. But the thing is you've got to leave these lids cracked. You got to leave them cracked open like this here. You won't want to put them airtight, because, you'll kill all the good life in your castings. Or I could recommend you could leave the lid sealed, but maybe drill some tiny portholes around the top right here, just around the base of the lid. I don't have any in this one, but because I'm just using this for demonstration purposes. But you could drill some tiny holes just below the lid here. I don't know, maybe about somewhere between 6 and 12, maybe, according to what your diameter of your hole will be. And that should give you enough oxygen to go in and out. And that would be a good way to store your castings. For folks who have a small bin at home and aren't producing a lot of castings, this might be a good option. Just remember to either crack the lid or drill you a couple air holes in the top. Now, this next one we're going to talk about, this is one of my personal favorites for long-term storage. Now, I opted for getting the food grade BPA free buckets for food and beverage storage. All right, you can get these at Lowe's or probably any Home Depot store. I think you can get them online on Amazon. And it's been a while since I bought these, and I know inflation's bad and prices have gone up a good bit. But when I purchased these, I think the bucket was around $5 or $6, maybe $7, $6 or $7 a bucket at most. And these lids, these come separate. You got to buy these separate, but usually you can buy them in the same place you buy the bucket. These are called, I think they're called Gamma lids. But the lid comes with the screw-on part of the lid, and it comes with this other base to the lid that snaps on to the bucket. And you might be able to put this lid on any bucket. I'm not sure. But anyhow, it's got threads on the inside. And as you can see, it screws on. It screws on just like that right there. See what I'm saying? And it used to come with a gasket on it, but I think the gasket on this one finally wore out and fell off somewhere. So anyways, you can seal these up. Now, same thing I talked about with the coffee cans. If you're going to seal this lid, you're going to need to drill some holes around the side of the bucket like that right there. Now, I didn't want to damage the bucket and drill a bunch of holes in the bucket that I paid, so good money for. So, I just leave the lid cracked. I just won't screw it down all the way. I'll just put the lid on, just barely put it on, just like that right there. Just barely put it on. Like that right there. If I can do it, if I can demonstrate it properly. Just screw it on enough to where the lid won't come off, but it's loose to let air in and out. That's what I like to do. And another thing you can do is when you fill your castings up in the bucket, you can layer either some shredded cardboard on top and moisten it real good, or some old newspaper. I don't know anybody that reads newspapers anymore, But in the old days, people used to read newspapers, and everybody had newspapers. So you could layer some newspaper on top and moisten it to keep your castings good and moist. Or, like I like to do, just put a layer of shredded cardboard on top. Just make sure it's good and moist. And when you put the lid on, just screw the lid on enough that it'll stay, but it's loose so air can transfer in and out. Now, that cardboard or that newspaper that's moist, it's going to serve a couple purposes. One, it's going to help keep your castings moist, right? So your air can come in and out the lid, but that layer of moist cardboard or newspaper is going to help retain the moisture in your worm castings down in the bucket. Also, though, if you're like me and you got a bunch of cocoons in your worm castings, they're probably going to end up hatching at some point. That extra cardboard or newspaper you got in here can also be a food source for any baby worms that might hatch in your castings. So that's another consideration to think about there. So this is my preferred method for long-term storage. Now you can store castings. I've stored castings for 6 months or more in one of these buckets with no problem. They stay nice and moist as long as you keep the the newspaper or the cardboard moist like I talked about. And then of course you could always take the bucket and dump it out on a tarp or something and spray a little bit of water on it and turn it over and moisten it back up and then put it back in the bucket if you need be. But I've never had to do that personally. They've always stayed good and moist for me. And then the other good thing about the buckets is, let me see if I can do this one-handed, y'all. The other good thing about the buckets is, see, they stack. So you can stack them. See how I got that right there? Look at there. That lid's on, but it's not airtight, see? So air can still go in and out, but you can stack bucket on top of bucket on top of bucket. I probably wouldn't stack more than 3 to 5, maybe 5 buckets high. Any higher than that, you might end up with a big mess. I don't know if I had to go more higher than 5 buckets. But you could definitely stack 3 to 5 of these buckets with no problem. Slide them over in the corner of your shed or somewhere out of the light. Make sure they ain't getting exposed to no direct sunlight, because that sunlight will kill your all the goodies in your worm casting. So you don't want that. So make sure you keep them out of in a good shaded dark area. But the bucket, the 5-gallon bucket, is my preferred method for long-term storage with these kind of screw-on lids. Now I know they make these regular plastic lids that just snap on to like regular buckets. That would probably work too. You just wouldn't snap the lid all the way on, all the way around. Or maybe drill you a few air holes in the lid. But I like 5-gallon buckets with lids. They're easy to carry. Most folks can carry a 5-gallon bucket, even if it's full of castings. So it's not too heavy for most folks. They stack good. They store good. And yeah, I love the bucket. Now here's another method. If you have a good many castings, but you don't have so many, you're going to have a bunch of 5-gallon buckets stacked on top of each other, you can do these mortar trays. Now, they make different size mortar trays. I got these size here. Let me walk around a little bit. I'll give you a little bit better of a shot of it. Give you a perspective of how big it is. Now, normally, I use these mortar trays. I use them for lots of things. I use them for separating my worms. I use them for carrying around mushroom compost sometimes. I always keep one of these mortar trays in the shed with mushroom compost in it, because that's what I feed my worms. And also I use the mushroom compost to top my cups of worms, my orders. When I do orders online for my eBay store, anytime I fill a worm order, I top it with a little bit of mushroom compost before I mail it off. Now, just imagine these are worm castings instead of mushroom compost. Same thing applies. You can put a good many castings in one of these mortar trays. Now, the only downside to these mortar trays is they're not that easily to move. Once you get them full, they kind of need to sit wherever you're filling them up at, because they're difficult. Unless you're a pretty big fella like me, I'm about 6 foot, 210, 215 pounds. So unless you're a pretty big fella like me, these things are kind of difficult to move around once they get full because of how big they are. But you can set them off to the side of your shed or somewhere out the way, fill them up with castings, and then you can take another one of these mortar trays like this right here, and you can kind of clamshell it. Let me demonstrate here. All right. Now, that ain't so tight And you can kind of, if you wanted to, you could kind of turn it just a little bit like that right there. And see, if you turn it just a little cattywampus like that right there, you can leave a little gap in it, and that'll give you plenty of air for your castings, y'all. And that'll keep the majority of them moist and covered up where the sun can't get to them, and the light, and they stay in the dark, so the life in your castings stay alive and living. Or you can do another thing I like to do. Sometimes I take these pieces of bamboo I got cut over here, and sometimes I'll just, if I can do this one-handed, y'all, excuse me for a moment, just prop them up like that right there. It ain't gonna work if I can't get it right with one hand. But anyways, let me see if I can do it there. It kind of worked like that, yeah. But I'll go around and stick me some, it ain't gonna work right. Anyhow, I'm making a fool of myself here on YouTube land now. But if I had both my hands, I could demonstrate it better. Here we go. I'm just going to do one. But anyways, you can just stick a little piece of wood. All right, okay, Aries. I know you think just because I'm sitting down here, squatted down here, you just think I'm just down here just for you, don't you? Yes, that's my buddy. That's my shed buddy, y'all. That's Aries. Yes. All right. Sorry, y'all. Aries keeps interrupting us. All right. So anyways, you can either twist it a little bit and keep it cattywampus like I showed you earlier, or you can take a piece of wood or something like that and just prop up in there like that right there. Leave a little gap, and that'll give you enough airflow that you don't have to worry about the life in your castings dying off because of lack of oxygen. All right. Now, for the big boy storage method, a tarp. Now, I would consider this, unless you got a really big shed or a really big warehouse or something, and I don't think most of us got warehouses or giant sheds in their backyard. I've got a pretty decent sized shed here. It's a 30 by 30 pole building, and about 25% of my pole building is full of junk in the corner over there, as you can see. So I need to clean that up. Please be kind to me in the comments down there. I know it's a mess over there in the corner, and I need to do something about it, but I'm so busy, y'all. I really got to find time to do that. But anyhow, my point is these tarps. All right. I would say this is good for short to medium term storage. Like I say, unless you got a big shop with lots of room and you can just leave castings laying on the floor indefinitely and they never get in your way, I guess that'd be fine. But what I do is, I'll bring you over here and show you over here. I got 2 of these tarps. Now, I started out with one, and I quickly realized I needed a second one. So, I put the tarp on the floor, and then I harvest the castings out the bins, and I place it on the tarp. Now, the castings are really moist when they come out the bins, so I spread them out, and I let them dry out a little bit, because they're really wet. They're kind of like mud when they come out the bottom of them bins over there. Now, with that being said, at a certain point, they'll be dry enough to bag up and get and sell to the customers, or take out in your garden and use in your garden, or your potted plants, or however you're using your castings. Once they dry out to that point and you don't want them to dry out any further, this is the best thing to do, y'all. You can take a tarp like this. See if I can do this one-handed. All right, let me see if I can do this one-handed, everybody. Y'all bear with me. All right. Y'all following along so far, I hope. All right. Now, once you dry your castings out to the level of moisture in your castings you're satisfied with, and you don't want them to get no drier, y'all, this is the best way I found to store a lot of castings in a small amount of space and keep them, they get plenty of air this way, but they also stay good and moist. You can take your handy dandy little brick. I know everybody's got a handy dandy little brick laying around. You just set it right there in the corner like that right there. And I like these tarps too. These ones from Amazon, they come with these little handles on them like this. Very helpful. I like this. If I remember, I'll try to put links to the tarps in the description, if I remember. But there, like that right there. Let me back up so you can get a good see of it. And y'all, dudes and dudettes out there, this is the way I like to store my castings. Now, at some point, my pile of castings will get too big, and I won't be, if I don't sell them quick enough or use them, I'll need to store them somewhere. And that's when I turn to the 5-gallon buckets. And then I fill the 5-gallon buckets up with whatever I can't store here, and you stack your 5-gallon buckets off in the corner of the shed somewhere. But this is how I do it, y'all. This is how I like to store my castings. For the most part, they all go on the tarp, and then they stay here on the tarp until I sell them or use them. Or until I get so many on the tarp, I can't add any more. Because, see, about once a week or every other week, I got to harvest castings out these bins, y'all. And if I ain't moving these castings from here into a bucket or off to a customer or into my garden, then I got to store them somewhere, and that's where the 5-gallon buckets come in. Now, like I say, if you know you're going to have some customers, you could go ahead and bag up, X amount of these sandbags, but I wouldn't bag up more in these sandbags than you're going to use or move or sell to a customer within a few weeks or a month at the most. I probably wouldn't want to store castings in the sandbags more than a month, unless you're not worried about them drying out, because they're going to dry out if you do more than a month. Again, the coffee cans are good for folks that don't make a lot of castings, just have a small operation going, and you'll have to do something with the air, either leave the lids ajar or drill some little holes in them. I think on these, the best thing to do would be drill a few holes around the top instead of leaving the lids ajar. But on these, because they got threads on the lids, you can partially close the lid and it still be open enough air can go in and out. So that's why I like these, and they stack really good and they hold a lot. This is great. This here will probably be good for the folks who think this might be good. If you're making just a few castings and you're thinking this might be enough, then this right here will probably be your next step up if you got too many to go in coffee cans. Because it holds a lot more than a coffee can, and you can keep them nice and moist and in the dark, and you can prop it open or cattywampus it around just a little bit so it can get airflow. But if you got a little operation going and you're making lots and lots of castings like I am, you're probably going to have to go with 5-gallon buckets and maybe a bigger tarp. Like if you got a bigger shed than I do, you could obviously have a bigger tarp, I've even thought about getting some other kind of bins, or you could build a bin, or maybe, I'm not sure what other storage methods. You drop it down in the comments. If you out there have any experience and you're a large worm casting producer and you've got a way to store castings that I haven't talked about, drop it in the comments below so we can all learn from your experience. So what y'all think? What will be the method you would use? I didn't bring an example. I don't think I have an example out here. I didn't bring an example of the bags I ship my castings in. No, I don't have one over there. But I got some poly tubing in the house that I make bags like this kind of out of, but it's black. And the only problem with those is you heat seal them and they heat seal together and they're airtight, so you got to poke a few holes in them so they got air. But that's how I ship my castings in the mail, my 5 and 10 pound bags that I ship out to customers. So I do have one of those in the house that I create poly bags out of, but I don't store them in the poly bags. I prefer to store them in the 5-gallon buckets with the lids ajar, just a little bit for airflow. But what would be your preferred method? Would you like? I really thought that the sandbags, when I bought them, I thought the sandbags was going to be my preferred method. I quickly realized the castings don't stay moist long enough. So they're really good for selling to customers who want 25 pounds of castings, and you can bag them up, and they stay good and moist for a couple weeks, 2-3 weeks, without doing anything to them. But like I say, after about 3 weeks or a month, they start drying out, and you're going to either have to add some moisture to them and put them back in the bag, or you're going to have to do something. What would you do? What would be your preferred method? That was what I thought I was going to do, and I quickly realized not, and I moved on to the buckets. I'd love to hear your comments down below, and don't forget, when you drop a comment down below in the video, it's going to get you entered in the 90% silver dime giveaway I'm doing this week. I do one every week. I actually do 2 every week. I do one in our egg extravaganza video, And all you got to do in that video is count all the eggs I collect from my chickens in the week and put that number in the comments. And if you get the right number of eggs counted, then that gets you on the wheel of names, and I'll announce the winner for that 90% silver dime this Saturday. And if you drop a comment in my other videos, now 1 entry per person, but if you drop a comment in my other videos, that gets you entered in another 90% dime giveaway. So I do 2 silver dime giveaways, and I announce the winners on Saturday during my live at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. Be sure to show up and come check us out on Saturday to the live and see who won that silver if you're interested. But I really am interested to hear from you. What would be your preferred method? Do you like the sandbag idea? Are you a smaller hobbyist and you'd rather reuse and upcycle or recycle something you already got, like coffee cans in the house? Or are you like me? Do you like the 5-gallon bucket with the gamma lid? Or would you prefer using the mortar trays, putting two of them together like a clamshell kind of thing? What you think about the tarp? Do you have a big shed? Do you have a lot of room for a giant tarp, a big tarp, put on the floor and put a bunch of castings on? And use the clamshell method with another tarp on top like this to keep them nice and moist? I'd love to hear your experience and what you do out there. Drop it in the comments so we can talk about it. Maybe I'll make another video on it, whatever y'all talk about in the comments. Well, y'all, be sure to let me know in the comments if you like this kind of video. If you do, I'll do my best to do more videos like this. Normally, I just walk through my worms and show you my worms. I'm toying with the idea of doing 1 worm walkthrough a week, and then the other 2 days, because I do my worm videos on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. So I'm toying with the idea of doing the worm walkthrough on Wednesdays, and then doing a different topic on Monday and a different topic on Friday. Let me know in the comments. What do you think? What would you do? What would you prefer? What do you want to see? Because I'm making this content for you guys out there in YouTube land, and I need to know what you want to see. You think that's a good idea? If so, give me a thumbs up. Let me know in the comments. Maybe share this video with a friend. I'd really appreciate that. And if you haven't already, come on over here and click that subscribe button. Y'all, we're trying to grow the channel, and when we get to 2,500 subscribers, I'm having another silver giveaway. I'm going to be giving away 2 American Silver Eagles. That's right, 2 troy ounces of fine silver going to one of you lucky viewers out there. And we ain't got too much further to go. We got 2,315 subscribers to the channel now. So we don't need but another, 185 more folks to click that subscribe button? So if I can get 185 more of y'all to click that subscribe button, that'll get us to that next giveaway, that next goal, and we'll give away some more silver. All right, y'all. I sure would appreciate that support. Don't forget, if you need any Red Wiggler composting worms or you want any of our worm castings, the links are down in the description. If you go click on them, they'll take you over to our eBay store, and I can hook you up, y'all. All right. Well, if you made it this far, y'all, you already know it. I appreciate it. God bless y'all. And y'all, come on back now. You hear?